Okay. It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday. All right. Let's go.
Doobie-doobie-doo. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo.
All right. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Actually, some Tuesdays. And you can catch me here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Quick shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter. What is going on, everyone? Oh, we have a good show tonight. Can't wait to get into it. Want to go to some of the comments here in the chat, and then we'll dive right in. We will dive right in. What's going on? Hannah G says, Sabby with a smile. Welcome. Shout out to Anthony, who's a Sabby member. OMG, 100%. No already. Hi, fam. Yes, please go ahead and take that poll that's pinned at the top of the live chat. I already saw the results earlier. It's pretty funny. But yeah, we'll go over that when we get into the Charles Booker story. What's going on? Bad Cookie said, I am very uninformed and don't know who Charles Booker is, but I do know who Rand Paul is, and his district won't vote him out. That is what I've been hearing from people in his district. So should be interesting. What's going on? Snowy Taco says Charles Booker sounds like it came from a name generator for being a politician. That was funny. That's a good one, Snowy Taco. Greetings, Joe says I cheated on my diet today. That's all right, Joe. Do the damn thing. Greetings, Denton. Rand Paul thinks outside the box once in a while. He actually questions the warmongering. The establishment, deep state, can't have that. I'm sure the oligarchy wants to get him out of there. Ooh, good points. What's going on? She's Black says Charles Booker wants to be in the club so bad he is willing to say anything. It's sad watching him appeal to the establishment. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. She's Black. What's going on? Lawrence Johnson, who's a Sabby member, says Doobie Doobie Door 2024. Greetings, Bruce. John Yarmouth is retiring. Why didn't he run for his seat? I don't know. That's a good question, Bruce. Shout out to Miguel, says peace. Greetings, Janice says the progressives in the House lost the trust of a substantial portion of the base Booker needs in order to win. I highly doubt he can pull it off. That's a good point, Janice. The same momentum that was surrounding Charles Booker, I would say a couple years ago when he ran for Congress, doesn't seem to be there the way that it was then. I have noticed that. Shout out to Eric T. Red says a very happy Tuesday to all lefty friends. Greetings, Monique in London. Warm greetings to everyone from across the pond. Or should I say from across the pond? I can't say it right. Screw it. Shout out to Angela says, glad to be in the house tonight. Hello, all. Greetings, Gamer says hello. And again, happy belated birthday, Gamer. Shout out to Yep X. Charles Booker, just like Nina Turner, have lost all credibility to me. Also, hi, Sabby, tagged you on Twitter with a possible RBN discussion topic. Thank you, Yep X. I'll take a look at that. Greetings, Kim says, hello, gamer. Hello, everyone. Terry's in the house says, good evening, Sabby and chat. What's good? Where a Pilgrim says, hey, everybody. Greetings, Rodrigo. Sabby Sabs, your vids are always on Jimmy Dore's recommended. He must watch a good amount of Sabby Sabs. That's interesting to know because I used to ask you guys this before, like, how did you find me? I used to actually do that in the beginning of my show. Like last year when I started, I used to ask people, please tell me in the comments how you found me, because I knew back then I was not coming up as like a recommended video. But that's interesting to hear that I am now. Thank you so much for that tidbit there. Shout out to Leroy, who's a Sabby member, says Charles is trash. You guys are brutal tonight. Yikes. Greetings, Peggy Robertson says, hi, Sabby. So great to be here. Hello, Peggy. What's going on, T. Torstrick? Hi, Sabby. I'm in Booker State, and I don't think he stands a chance. Ouch. Oh, man. What's going on? The Traveler says, happy Tuesday, y'all. And Charles Booker is going to get smoked in November. Oh, man, these comments. What's going on? Jonathan says, hey, Sabby, I'm so disappointed in Booker. Yeah, he really, I don't know what happened to him, but I thought he was going to be a powerhouse, and he's just become more, he sounds more and more like a liberal. I don't know what's happening there. Greetings, Jay says, district is a state. What's going on? See the change? Hey, Sabs, excited about the show. Love you all. What's going on, Notori? Always saying, rock on, peace, rock on. What's going on? Roger Meadows is on here and not on Rockfin. Sorry, Charlie. You went from Medicare for All to ACA. Ugh. These things are going to hurt him. Shout out to Lewis, says, hello. What's going on? Roman says, hey, gamer. Gamer, you are very popular. Thank you for this super chat. Jay, the informant. Charles Booker is a disgrace with that disgusting ad. I can't make this up, man. I can't. See, everybody's seeing it. They're seeing right through it. Okay. Shout out to Jay Burke. I actually write with my left hand. What's your excuse? LOL. I don't know what that's about. Shout out to Orca says, did you watch the Aaron Mate discussion on the Vanguard? Was wondering your thoughts. I saw part of it. I didn't watch the entire thing. Honestly, I thought it was pretty cringe, like, to be honest with you. You know, again, I know of both of them, but I will say at one point during the discussion, it started to seem like this was becoming more about Jackson Hinkle. And that's when I switched, because I'm like, I'm not doing another Jink Bree thing where Jink Uger continues to bring up Jimmy Dore and all these other people who are not present. So I will say, I think if they want to know those things about Jackson Hinkle, I think they should have that discussion with him. So yeah, that was a turn that turned me off for a bit. So I didn't see the whole thing. Michaela says, saw you on Jimmy Dore. Thank you. Good to know. So I see how a lot of people have found me. You said there's a Rockfin chat, Eric. We can go ahead and take that, and then I'll get started. This is from Dave. I found Sabby through the General Strike Conference at RBN, where Sabby with several others, including Brianna J. and then realized she had her own stream. Oh, interesting. Awesome. Great to know, Dave. Yeah, General Strike Summit was awesome, you guys. It was awesome. Bad Cookie said, oh, hell yes, Sabby. If you got beef, deal with it face to face. Yeah, I don't. Look, I'll be honest with you guys. I told you, I don't like this whole debate me, bro thing. I don't like it. I feel like it's just it's like this ego thing. I don't like that. I don't do ego. Sabby doesn't like. So that's my take on that. Now, what are we talking about tonight? Let me go ahead and share my thumbnail here. Doop doop doopy doo. All right. What are we talking about tonight, ladies and gentlemen? We are discussing Richard Wolff capitalism. So Richard Wolff is dropping some major truth bombs about the recession. And we're going to talk about that tonight, because the thing that I will say He tends to go a little bit further than some people when he talks about these economic issues. So that is one of the things that I like about Richard Wolff. So we're going to get into that. We're also going to discuss Saagar Enjeti tried. Oh, he did. I can't wait to get into that story. He was good at the beginning with this story I'm going to show you, and then he lost me. So also going to discuss Charles Booker fail. We need to talk about this statement that has come out from Charles Booker. He had an interview recently, and I'm going to go over that clip, and we're going to go through a couple of the things on his website, which I think you need to be paying attention to. And also, Boston Starbucks striker joined. So around 8 p.m.-ish, I do have one of the Starbucks employees that's on strike here in Boston. They've been in strike or on strike for over 30 days. I believe that's the longest a Starbucks has been on strike. So he's going to come on to talk about that. So that story is getting a lot of attention, and kudos to all of them. All of them. Okay. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you are interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabby, Sabinators, and of course, ultimate. Oh, Sabsters. I forgot to mention that one. All of their names are listed here. You guys are rock stars. You really do help me out a lot. It pays for a lot of the stuff that we have to use here. But all of their names are here. Thank you guys. Thank you. And their names are also scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So let's go ahead and get into this first story here with Richard Wolff. He really does a phenomenal job of breaking this down. Now, Richard Wolff, we have been covering his economic update at least once a week, I would say. Especially during this time where we have inflation. I think it's important that we need to be paying attention to these topics. And I feel like they're not getting as much of attention as they should get. So we are going to break this down. One of the things I do like that he does on this economic update is that he doesn't just tell you about the problems. Richard Wolff also talks to you about possible solutions. And you don't always hear that. And I like that he does that because he is showing you there are ways to solve some of these economic problems that we're dealing with right now. Not everybody's doing that. So let's go ahead and get into this segment here. Again, we're in recession mode, and the name of this video is called Economic Update Recession, Capitalism's Failure. Oh, when I cut the title off here. Okay, I'll tell you later, but it's Capitalism's Failure, and then there's something here. I can't read that part, but let's go ahead and dive in.
So let's begin. Recession. Here's the simple definition. It's when the economy turns down, usually suddenly, over a very few number of weeks and maybe a few months. Large numbers of people are either unemployed or forced to take part-time work or finding their jobs in danger. Small businesses go out of business. Medium and large businesses find their activities shrinking. They can't produce as much. They can't sell as much. Because of all of that, the tax revenues received by local communities and by the country as a whole start shrinking, which means that the government is pinched and can't do what it normally would like to do and is asked to do by the people. In other words, it's an economic downturn. In fact, the word recession has lots of synonyms: downturn, bust, crash, crisis, depression. I could go on. Why is it that we have so many words? Why is it that I'm talking about recession? Well, recession is part of the capitalist economic system. It's as old as capitalism itself, 300-400 years, if you count the beginning of capitalism in 17th and 18th century England. We have an agency here in the United States called the National Bureau of Economic Research, which actually keeps track of when the recessions occur, and their research shows that they've occurred on the average, every 4 to 7 years, pretty much wherever capitalism has settled in. Now,
I want to add in something here. Notice he said, according to the research, a recession happens usually every 4 to 7 years. I want to point that out to you because that's important, especially for those of you that go to college. If you go to college, let's say if you went to college in 2000, you graduated 2004, so you got your bachelor's. You possibly at that time was already either entering into a recession or one was about to start. And I point this out to you because of this reason. This is why when people say to college graduates, well, you should have majored in something that was going to be financially beneficial for you, that can and cannot work, because whatever you choose as your major while you're in college, by the time you graduate from college, if we are now going back into a recession, even though that field may have been profitable while you were in school, doesn't mean that field will be profitable when you graduate from college. And that's important to note. So I want people to stop blaming the college grads for not picking majors that were going to be financially lucrative, because you don't really know what's going to happen with the economy by the time that you graduate. So I did want to point that out. Remember that 4 to 7 years is significant. Let's go back in. Oh, and this is also the reason why when that does happen, those college graduates tend to go back to school. They'll go to grad school, they'll pick up another trade, they'll become a career changer. This is why those things tend to happen. So write that down. Seriously, write that down. Next time you hear them use that line of excuse, tell them what Richard Wolff just said about the 4 to 7 years.
of course, that's an average. So sometimes it can take longer, sometimes it can take shorter. Moreover, recessions vary. Sometimes the number of people losing their jobs is relatively small, at least at the beginning. Sometimes it's catastrophic. For example, the recession in 2020, a bare 2.5 years ago, was catastrophic. Huge millions, tens of millions of Americans lost their job in a matter of weeks. Now, that had something to do with the pandemic and COVID, as well as a crash, but that one was a doozy. By comparison, the one we're in now is, at least so far, less severe. Recessions also vary in how long they last. Some it's only a few months, some it's years. The Great Depression, no surprise it got called that, lasted from 1929 to about 1940-41, so that's 11 years, and give you an idea of how bad they can get. The other side of recession in an economic system called capitalism is inflation. Then suddenly it's a kind of crazy time. We're in that now too, in the sense that prices are going up, so businesses are eager to hire people and invest and produce, because whatever the price they can charge now that's profitable, that's going to be higher 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years from now, making their profits even bigger. So inflation is a kind of overspeeding of the economy, the flip side of which is a recession. And here's the worst thing about capitalism's instability. It lurches from one to the other. Indeed, we are right now, as I'm talking with you, coming to the end of a good year or so of inflation and finding ourselves plunging into a recession. That's very common. The recessions provoke inflations, the inflations provoke recessions. This is an unstable economy. Indeed.
Notice what he just said. This is an unstable economy. And this is happening apparently 4 to 7 years. So, or every 4 to 7 years. So you really have to, I would say to succeed financially in this country, you really gotta knock it out of the park. You really do. Sometimes it's a little bit of luck. Sometimes it's because you come from a family that is already wealthy, so you already have inherited wealth. But for everyday average Joe Schmoes, you really all of your cards have to be lined up precisely at a moment where everything is going to work out for you, depending on the field that you choose to go into and depending on where the economy is at that time. It's no wonder there's so many people struggling financially in this country.
By the way, you will sometimes see, and that's happened more and more in recent years, simultaneously recession and inflation. And we have a word for that now called stagflation. It's the mixture of the word stagnation, economy going nowhere, plus prices going nuts. That's pretty much what we have now. The way to summarize this is to say that capitalism is an extraordinarily unstable system.
That's right. And that's the point that I want to drive home. Do you see how he connects the dots? Capitalism is the problem. That's why we have these issues to begin with. That's why we have recessions. That's why we have inflations. This is why a lot of people in this country are living paycheck to paycheck because of capitalism. He connects all the dots. It all goes back to capitalism.
Lectures I used to give in the university, I would at this point lean across the podium and say to my students, if you lived with a roommate as unstable as capitalism is, you would have moved out long ago. A little harder to move out of an economic system.
That's right.
Recessions have troubled capitalism, as I said, from the beginning. And they trouble both the employer class and the employee class. In a peculiar way, recessions are something nobody wants, but that this system imposes on all of us over and over again, which, as I'll say later in the program, is a very good reason to question a system that works like this. How does it hurt employers? Well, employers can only make profits if they got people working and if they can sell what they produce. Recession is precisely those moments when they can't employ the people they used to because they can't sell what they are capable of producing. So they lay workers off. That's not good for the workers either, of course, but it's not good for them and their profits.
And it's also not good for the employees that were not laid off that are still at those companies, because now those employees have to take on more work and they have to work longer hours sometimes. So everyone loses in this situation. The employees who have been laid off, the employees who are still left there, the employer, the economy, everyone loses except for that top 1%. They don't lose. The billionaires, they're fine. CEOs, their wealth doubled during the pandemic. They'll be all right. A lot of them are set for life.
So it makes a mockery of capitalism's claim to be efficient. You can be very efficient when you're working, but all of that is lost and negated if for long periods of time you're not working. Your machines sit idle, and your workers are sitting at home worried about their future. And it doesn't do anything for your profits either. So employers don't like recessions. And what about employees? Well, they take the real lion's share of the suffering. They lose their jobs. They lose the security that comes with a job. They lose the income that they get paid for a job. Their lives are disrupted.
Let's talk about something here for a second that I think is important as well. You notice he was talking about how the employer also suffers as well, because if people aren't buying your products, then you're not really making money, right? So something I want you to consider here in reference to this situation. I want you to think about which businesses are more likely to suffer the most. And I can tell you what I saw during the pandemic here locally, right here in Massachusetts, small businesses suffered the most because a lot of times they don't have that extra capital. They don't have this extra cushion to carry them through a recession, tough times like we had the pandemic. They don't have it. And some of them, they'll be okay for maybe like the first month or so or 2 months. But as time went on, they weren't able to stay open. So I watched businesses that had been in Boston for years, some of them through multiple generations of the families, and they closed their doors for good. They had no choice. They weren't making any money. So I want you to take that in and think about that. Small businesses are going to suffer the most because they can't seem to make up that extra capital unless they got something else going on the side. They have a difficulty making up that difference. And so I think we need to pay close attention to how small businesses are doing right now in this economy. And that is not to say that everyone can still afford to go to the mom and pop places, because sometimes those businesses suffer along with this recession because as prices are going up everywhere else, they're going up in those stores too. And sometimes if you're looking at these smaller businesses like a family owned hardware store, well, their prices are usually higher than hardware that you would find at Walmart or at Target, right? Walmart usually is a cheaper option. So now you have people who have been laid off. You have people who are struggling financially. When it comes time for them to purchase goods, they're probably going to go with the cheaper option because they can't afford to go to the small businesses anymore. And now the small businesses are going to suffer because of that as well. So that's something to keep in mind.
And think about it. If they happen every 4 to 7 years, your life is disrupted on average every 4 to 7 years.
That's right.
Unless a special arrangement is made, and I'll come back to that in a minute. And here's what we know from research. During recessions, alcoholism gets worse in our culture. Should be no surprise. Domestic disputes get worse. Divorce rises. Abuse of family members goes up. Loss of self-esteem happens as workers out of work blame themselves rather than an unstable system for.
This is all effects of capitalism. Do you hear that? I'm going to come back into this video, but there is one thing I want to show you about what he mentioned in reference to alcohol. Look at this for a second. Alcohol consumption during the pandemic projected to cause more liver disease and deaths. Key takeaways. I'm not going to read this entire article here, but a 1 year increase in alcohol consumption in the U.S. during the pandemic is estimated to cause 8,000 additional deaths from alcohol-related liver disease, 18,700 cases of liver failure, and 1,000 cases of liver cancer by 2040. A sustained increase in alcohol consumption for more than 1 year could result in 19 to 35% additional mortality. Now, I'm just going to tell you something briefly about what happened here locally. Alcohol sales and consumption increased during the start of the pandemic, but the effect of the increase in consumption on population health is not fully understood. So this article, and Eric, you can put this in the chat if you want. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but I just wanted to prove a point there. That is very much true. What Richard Wolff just told you about increase in alcohol consumption. In fact, when a lot of those small businesses here started to close, when we were shut down during the pandemic, you know which businesses stayed in business? The package stores. I should explain that for those of you, if you don't live here. Here in Massachusetts, people don't really call them liquor stores per se. They're called package stores, right? Some people call it the Packy or something like that. It was new to me too when I first moved here. But alcohol sales were doing okay. Most of the breweries were doing okay because they were able to adopt their model. And instead of having their tap rooms open, they had curbside pickup. So people could just drive by the brewery, pick up their beer, and go home. So why would alcohol consumption increase? Because people are in a state of despair, because people are experiencing one of the worst effects of capitalism. It happens. Let's go back into the video. I'm glad that he pointed that out. And also, to go along with what he said about domestic abuse, the reason why that increases is based on what I feel is because when you read, and I've read this multiple times, when you read that the number one cause of divorce is money, finances, believe that. Seriously, believe that. So if you're going through a recession and people are struggling financially, particularly in your family, you're probably more likely to get into more heated discussions, arguments. If you were already in an abusive relationship, it's probably going to get worse. This is how money affects people. And there's no excuse, by the way, no defending domestic abuse. Just want to make that very clear. But those numbers did increase. I did notice that. So I'm so glad that he pointed that out. Let me just go back just a little bit here because he was saying something and I think I cut him off. Okay.
And here's what we know from research. During recessions, alcoholism gets worse in our culture. Should be no surprise. Domestic disputes get worse. Divorce rises. Abuse of family members goes up. Loss of self-esteem happens as workers out of work blame themselves rather than an unstable system for doing this. And you know, people who get repeatedly thrown out of work every 4 to 7 years lose their whole relationship to the labor process. They become known as an underclass, as the people who don't look for work anymore because they've simply been traumatized by unemployment too many times.
I'm glad that he mentioned the trauma that can come along with that. I think there is a misconception that people that don't work don't want to work. Not everyone. Some people have had some traumatic experiences just trying to find jobs that will help them just make a living wage and make ends meet. And they just get boggled down by the system. I saw a documentary of this before, back during the 2008 housing crisis, where there was a gentleman and they were following him to every job interview. And this guy was highly educated. He was laid off. He lost his house, everything. He was a part of that group of people that lost everything during 2008. He was going from interview to interview to interview to interview, and he could not get a job. So then he started to look for positions that were basically he was overqualified for, but he needed a job, right? And then they didn't want to hire him because he was overqualified. So he just stopped. He just gave up and he became homeless. He said, I just can't. So people have had some traumatic experiences dealing with the labor market in this country and just trying to make a living just to make ends meet. I feel like, see, Professor Wolff, he gets that.
So horrible unemployment that in many societies, they've arranged things so a specialized minority is the one that's fired when the economy goes down, gets then rehired if they're lucky when it turns back up, only to be refired again when it turns down. I call them the shock absorbers of capitalism's instability. In the United States, it's worked like this. Immigrants, African Americans, and women have been the ones brought into the labor force when it's booming and thrown out of work the minute the next recession hits.
That is 100% on. In fact, when he came onto my show last year, he brought that up. And this is where some of the scapegoating comes in, right? This is where people will come in and they'll say, we're not getting these jobs because all the immigrants, all these people took our jobs. It goes a lot deeper, huh?
That's why they're marginal to the economic system. their incomes are lower, their place in the pecking order is lower, their wealth accumulation is lower. That's right. They're the shock absorbers, thrown back to their country of origin when we don't want them here because we don't have jobs, or thrown back into the household if they're women, or thrown back into the ghettos of African American communities.
That's right. And I can tell you, for women per se, what do some companies, when they look at women, and they're not supposed to do this, but it happens, when they're looking at women, why do they see a risk with them? What can happen with women? We can get pregnant, right? We can have kids, right? That requires time off. That requires maternity leave. They can see us as a liability. They don't see us as, like he said, these are the shock absorbers. They don't really see us as beneficial to necessarily keep around. That's the thing. That's why it's usually they bring them in when everything's going great with the economy. And when things start to turn down, you're the first to go.
In other words, there's a link between the instability of capitalism and the racism and sexism and anti-immigration surges we keep noticing in our culture. Well, something as awful for both employers and employees as this built-in instability has had the logical result. Capitalists are afraid because one of the items I haven't mentioned until this moment that follows from recession is that more and more people question the system. What kind of a system is that presents us with this lurching back and forth, inflation, recession, inflation? What kind of a system is this? Maybe the solution isn't to go fix this and that one and this little detail and that, but maybe to change the system to get one that isn't so unstable in the first place.
And that is what you see happening now. And you see more employees going on strike, demanding to have some type of union. Now you have more people starting to question the system, because especially those who heavily came out and voted in 2020, some of them are sitting back and they're looking around and they're like, wait a minute now. We've changed presidents. We've changed political parties in the White House. Why am I still struggling? People are starting to see it. Wait a minute now. We have all these billions and billions of dollars to give to Ukraine, but I can't get health insurance. Something is not right. And it's sad that it actually took a pandemic for more people to see that. Now, some of us who are living that already knew that, but I think now you have a point where even the middle class is being affected.
And that really frightens the people who like capitalism, who sit at the top, the 1%, the rich folks, the powerful folks, the ones who are never unemployed. And so they have tried everything to overcome this problem. For 300 years, they've been trying to figure out how to have a capitalism without instability. And obviously, it's a big fat failure because we're in one right now. So obviously, for the 300 years, they didn't figure it out. The closest they came was when a very smart economist named John Maynard Keynes, a British economist, in the depths of the Depression of the 1930s, came up with a set of things he called the monetary policy and fiscal policy that the government could do, not to stop the cycles, obviously we haven't learned how to do that, but to make them a little less awful than they might otherwise have been if the government didn't intervene. And that.
Let's look at that. That piece right there is so, I would say, important for people to hear. I do want to break down those terms for you in the event that you're like, what is he talking about? So let's talk about that. For example, we're going to talk about monetary policy and we're going to talk about fiscal policy. Now, I do want to explain this to you. Monetary policy, meaning types and tools. Monetary policy is a set of tools that a nation's central bank has available to promote sustainable economic growth by controlling the overall supply of money that is available to the nation's banks, its consumers, and its businesses. Eric, feel free to share this with people too. So it says here as well, monetary policy is a set of tools used by a nation's central bank to control the overall money supply and promote economic growth, and employ strategies such as revising interest rates and changing bank reserve requirements. In the United States, the Federal Reserve Bank implements monetary policy through a dual mandate to achieve maximum employment while keeping inflation in check. And this is something I was telling you about that Professor Wolff does very well. He doesn't just talk about the problem, he also talks about possible solutions. And this is an example of something that could be done. Monetary policy. Again, it says right here, the Federal Reserve Bank implements monetary policy through a dual mandate to achieve maximum employment while keeping inflation in check. That is one way. The other way, which was mentioned, is fiscal policy, taking and giving away. Let's dive into this one. So this one is a little bit different. Fiscal policy is the use of government spending and taxation to influence the economy. Governments typically use fiscal policy to promote strong and sustainable growth and reduce poverty. What? Governments typically use fiscal policy to promote strong and sustainable growth and reduce poverty. Well, would you look at that? The role and objectives of fiscal policy gained prominence during the recent global economic crisis, when governments stepped in to support financial systems, jumpstart growth, and mitigate the impact of the crisis on vulnerable groups. So this is another action here that Professor Wolff is saying can also be used. So you learned two things tonight. If you were not familiar with those, hopefully you learned something when you watched the show. But let's dive back in.
That's why we have a Federal Reserve to come in there and manipulate the money supply. So if there's a recession and people are losing their jobs, they quickly bring down the interest rate, so it's cheaper for companies to borrow. Hopefully they'll borrow more and they'll hire workers and the recession won't be so bad. Or, as we're seeing now, if there's an inflation, they jack up the interest rates to make it harder for businesses and people to borrow, more expensive, hoping that by having less borrowing, there'll be less buying, and that will make the sellers of goods less likely to jack up the prices.
There you go.
All that this is late in the day, make the cycle, because that's what it is, the business cycle, less awful and horrible than it might otherwise have been. And that's not enough many times. That's why President Nixon back in 71, when we had another horrible inflation, of course, took a very different step, not lowering interest rate. What he did is he went on radio and television and said, as of tomorrow morning, nobody raises a price, nobody raises a wage. If you do it, we'll arrest you and throw you in the clink. Well,
I actually did not know about that. I was not aware of that. So this was new to me, something I learned by watching this video. It makes you wonder why that hasn't happened now.
well, let's stop the inflation on a dime, because there is no problem solving these problems. It's a political question of whether the system is able to focus and make a decision to deal with these problems. What capitalism has shown us in 300 or 400 years of its history is it lacks the capacity to do that. And that's a flaw and failure of the system. We've come to the end of the first part of today's show about recessions. Before we move on, I want to
Okay, yeah. So that's the first part. If you want to watch the entire video here, again, it is on Democracy at Work. And the name of this video is called Economic Update Recession, Capitalism's Failure Invites System Change. So definitely check that out. That video posted yesterday. So should be the most recent one there, I think, if you look into it now. Now, I do want to say this as well. I mentioned small businesses, and I just want to show you some of the effect that has happened to the smaller businesses here. State of Small Business Report released. How is Massachusetts doing? I'm not going to read the entire article here, but I do want to point out a point here. First triggered by the global pandemic 2 years ago, small businesses across the country have taken a hit, and many are still struggling to stay afloat. Now, that's according to the Global State of Small Business Report, and that information was gathered of March this year. According to the new report, small businesses closures have fluctuated throughout the pandemic, first making a comeback from the initial shock in March 2020, then deteriorating again at the start of 2021. This is what I was trying to tell people last year when they said, oh, things are back on track. I'm like, no, they're not. And once again, when I can't say the name on here, but you guys can read that there, took the nation by force at the end of 2021. The last survey conducted in July 2021 found that closure rates were 18%, much lower than levels observed in May 2020 at 29%. This survey conducted in February 2022 found that closure rates were higher again, reaching 21%. So do you guys see? The closure rates for small businesses have increased again. So when people tell you that the economy is doing so great, I beg to differ. When they tell you that, ask them for whom. Because I just showed you for small business owners, not so much, at least not here. Not doing so great for poor people, and it's not doing so great for working class people either. So these things need to be discussed. All right, I'm gonna go to some of the comments here, and kudos to Professor Wolff for that, because I'm telling you, once a week, watch an episode of Professor Wolff's Economic Update. You'll learn something new every time, I promise you. Leroy says, facts, I quit after a semester after I realized that the major I was in would likely disappear by the time I was out, and I was right. See? Thanks for the super chat, Female Rage. Psychology doesn't pay well, but we need psychiatrists and therapists. That should have picked a better paying field argument is trash. Exactly. Amanda says, I trust this man's word because he went to school with everyone in power and is yet entirely genuine in his motives. It's a big club, and you and I are not in the big club. Truth. YepX says, saw tons of small businesses shut down over the years as giant box stores, monopolies do just fine and see an increase in profits. That's right. They can bounce back. Walmart, Target, they're going to be all right. They're going to be okay. Thanks for the super chat, AJF. The way we do capitalism seems to be mentally centered on short-term gains at the cost of long-term stability. Sorry for coming off as esoteric, aka philosophical. Thank you so much for that, AJF. Leroy says capitalism is a system that's cool with war for profit. It's a terrible system that's made to always crash. Yep. Thank you for the super chat, Beffer. The safety net is also traumatizing in how difficult it can be to navigate and how undependable it is. That's true too, because you don't really know how much of a safety net you should have. Like, how much should you have stashed away, right? I don't know. Bad cookies. You definitely teach me something new every time I watch Sabby. You keep me from being completely uninformed. Oh, thank you for that. I try to educate here. Casey, Sabby, this is awesome. My daughter will use this in her final semester in economics. Thank you. All right, Casey. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, and then we can dive into our next story. Thank you for the tip, Roger Meadows. 1534 Tremont. Also was listening to last Wednesday's call-in about Jink and Bree. I got up to the point where the caller said a professor said anyone but Bernie, because if college is free, he can't charge private colleges what he wants. Zoomers, please study abroad for free. Put U.S. colleges out of business. Matter of fact, stay over there and get your free healthcare and faster internet. Make U.S. cries uncle and say, okay. I've been telling, listen, for all the younger people, something I wish I could have told my students when I was advising them, which I couldn't, obviously. If you can do so, go to school outside of the United States where it's free. Go somewhere where it's free. You don't want to graduate with all this debt, man. I'm telling you from experience, it is not fun. Okay. See, 751. I do want to go on to this story with Saagar Enjeti. Let's go to that one. We'll bounce to that one really quick. So someone sent me this clip and I was listening to it and I was halfway through the clip and I was like, okay, so far he's actually making some good points. And then he lost me. So let's go ahead and get into that. He's talking here about how the U.S. is getting ripped off because of the conflict in Ukraine. Like I said, he starts off great and then he loses me. Let's dive in.
All right, Saagar, what are you looking at?
Well, it's been nearly 180 days since Russia invaded Ukraine, 6 full months of war, the likes of which we have not seen on the European continent since World War II. In the early days of the war, certain things were not allowed to be debated in the public square in the West, such as, is it a good idea to pull the ripcord on the global petroleum market for the Russian invasion of Ukraine? How long should the West pay high gas prices? Will our sanctions have the intended effect? What is our end goal? Is it in Ukraine? Is it total Ukrainian military victory? Is it a stalemate? If so, what kind? What is our diplomatic end goal? Militarily, what does that even look like? In terms of the weapons that we're shipping them month after month, are we sure?
So far, again, I think that's a good question. What is the end goal? Does anybody know? Anyone in the chat? Has the U.S. government explained what the end goal is supposed to be for the United States? Stay with me, though. Like I said, he starts off good, and then it goes south.
They're being used as intended? Are we sure they will stay in the right hands if they even make it to them at all? Do we have a plan in place to ensure stability, not just temporary military victory? Now, of course, we asked all those questions on this show, and of course, not one of them was ever entertained by the U.S. Congress. In general, the media and the political establishment smeared you as a Putin apologist if you asked even one of those questions, not that I particularly care. Now,
he's right about that point too. If you start asking questions about the money going over there, if you start asking what he just said, what's the end goal, what is supposed to become of all of this? Yeah, some people will come out and smear you. Big Mad Crab just, yeah, right. Ukraine is going to be the new Afghanistan. Exactly. He's right. On that point, he's right. Let's go, though. Let's continue.
at its core, the case for defending Ukraine by the West was simple. All those questions aside, we must stand up to Putin in Ukraine so he and other autocratic countries do not feel emboldened to go further and threaten our NATO allies who either share a border with Russia or are nearby. Okay. Now, much was made of the transatlantic alliance, not only between the US and the UK, but France, Germany, and the rest of the continent. The pledge was made by this so-called United West for everyone to step up and take action. There is just one problem. Just like at the core of the NATO alliance, there has been a rot for decades. The same problem has now reared its head with respect to the Ukrainian conflict. July, for example, was a rough month for Ukraine and for the West policy. July saw record profits by Russia from oil. Ukraine definitively lost a major military campaign in the east, and it was regrouping for an offensive to retake territory. The U.S. recognized this by passing and sending billions of dollars of military aid to Ukraine. Now, you would think then, well, the rest of the European countries, since we're all united, we're all in this together, are stepping up too. That's actually completely wrong. In fact, new data tells us that not only did they not even send any of the piddly support they had previously.
Has anyone else noticed that? That it seems like the only people that's really out there supporting them right now, at least financially especially, has been the United States. Anybody else notice this? Where are all the other allies? Why are they getting the same amount of money from other countries? Or are they just hounding us? This was something I pointed out a while back. I'm like, why are we, what are we, a bank? Now, that is not to say that I am not sympathetic with what is happening to people over there. I am. But we're not a bank. We can't even fix problems in our own country, but we have money to go send it to another country to help fix their problems. Someone make that make sense to me. If your family is struggling financially, struggling to put food on the table, and you get extra money, are you going to give that money to some stranger that you don't know, or are you going to feed your family first? Most people are going to feed their family first. The United States government doesn't want to feed its people first. The United States government doesn't want to give everybody in this country health care first. But part of that aid package that went to Ukraine was for health care. I pointed that out a couple of weeks ago. We went through the numbers. Shout out to Glenn Greenwald because he was the one that called it out. It's not just for weapons. There's other items as well. Healthcare, food, clean drinking water was one of the items. We don't have clean drinking water. But wait for it.
But that Europe's 6 greatest powers and largest economies did not send €1 of bilateral military aid in the entire month of July. Those powers include the UK, France, Germany, Spain, and Italy, and Poland, all of which have far more to lose from any general war in Europe than we do, and who literally are both closer to Russia, but have fought wars with them for hundreds of years prior.
Dude, we're not even in the same, we're not even in the same space. We're across the pond. Like what the, we're not even there. And the countries that are right next to them, where are they? Where's the help?
And as shocking as a zero figure is, it's even more shocking when you look at things in terms of absolute aid. In terms of overall aid, the United States to date has provided Ukraine with 25 billion euros of military aid so far. No other country even comes close to 1/5 of that.
Let's pause it right here. Look at the map. I can't make this up, you guys. Do you see this? Okay. Dark blue greater than 75%. Look at all the money. What is hell? What? Huh.
Yes, you heard me correctly. The only ones who even though approach the 1/5 figure is the United Kingdom, which has sent 4 billion euros of aid. After that, there are so-called EU institutions, which barely count since they're supposed to represent like 29 different countries, and Poland, and they have provided 1.8 billion. Germany, the 4th largest economy on earth, a so-called great ally of the US, which has the biggest GDP on the continent, has sent 1.2 billion. France, the 7th largest economy, the 2nd largest European power, has sent 0.23 billion. Italy has sent 0.15, which
I just want to jump in here and say Germany and France and Italy said, look, I don't know what this is all about, but we're going to take care of our own people first. You hear me? Germany, Italy, and France said, look, we are going to take care of our own first. Whatever we got left after that, that's what you're going to get.
Means to date, the United States has provided more military aid to Ukraine than all of the European continent combined. So I compose a very simple question. If this is a war against Putin aggression, why should the United States care more about peace in Europe and the greatest powers on the European continent? Unless the so-called European powers know that they don't actually have to do anything, they continue to subsidize their vast welfare states, and that we will continue to foot the bill because of our politicians, media, and establishment class are far dumber than theirs are. What made things especially comical is as I was writing this monologue, an announcement came across the wire. The Department of Defense has announced we will provide an additional $775 million in military aid to Ukraine to mark the 6-month anniversary of the war. Those include HIMARS rocket systems, artillery, ammunition, drones, and mine-resistant troop vehicles. This $775 million in aid outstrips entire European nations on the continent in dollar terms, and just another routine resupply by the United States. The simple fact is, the U.S. is getting ripped off to a historic degree by the people who are supposedly such great allies. They talk a big game, they appear at the conferences, they say it's all about them and about us, but when the bill comes due, we are the only people paying it. And here's the thing, our payment may cost us big time in the future. A Pentagon official recently revealed shocking information before Congress, which nobody in the press thought to warn the American people about. The United States supply of Javelin anti-tank missiles is currently at a full, reduced 1/3 capacity because of the support for Ukraine, and will take years to replace that stock. Our supply of Stinger missiles is also reduced by 1/4. The Stinger missiles in particular are a problem because they literally are not in production anymore. Raytheon CEO says that if you want them back, our production line, it will take almost 18 months to even begin.
Spencer, I see you. I should be ready in like a couple minutes, okay? I'm just wrapping up a story. So what was really funny about this to me is that it was almost like he just realized that nobody else is stepping up to help. That's why this was kind of funny to me. It's just like, I guess it just hit him that everybody's kind of looking at us to come to the rescue. We're not a bank. I'm sorry, but wait for it. It gets worse.
Furthermore, while everyone is worried about Ukraine, we also have interest in Asia, where Stinger missile deliveries for Taiwan that were scheduled had to be pushed back because of Ukraine. Now,
yikes. Do you guys see the problem, the cringe moment I had with this discussion? Everything that he was saying about the money was spot on, billions and billions of dollars that are going over there. And we seem to be the only one that's really stepping up and is giving more money. He was going in the right direction, but then towards the end of this video, he still wants to have war. Did you catch that? Look, wait a minute. Here we go.
Are not in production anymore. Raytheon CEO says that if you want them back, our production line, it will take almost 18 months to even begin. Furthermore, while everyone is worried about Ukraine, we also have interest in Asia, where Stinger missile deliveries for Taiwan that were scheduled had to be pushed back because of Ukraine. Now tell me.
Did you hear that? He's still advocating for war. That's the problem. Everything up until that point was spot on. And that's when he lost me. I don't know what to say. But I do see that my guest is here. Spencer, I'm going to go ahead and add you to the stream.
Hi.
Hello. I think you have a little bit of feedback, so I'm going to mute you when you're not talking real quick, and then I'll unmute you. It happens sometimes. But everyone, please welcome my special guest. His name is Spencer. They are actually participating in the Starbucks strike that's happening here in Boston. I told you guys about this a couple of days ago. So Spencer, welcome. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
So you'll have to tell everyone what happened with this particular Starbucks location. And I asked because there's been a bunch of Starbucks stores that other people have come on here as well, and they talked about what was happening at their location. What was the issue with the one on Commonwealth Ave, and why the employees decided to rise up and decided to strike?
Yeah. So we voted to unionize on June 3rd, unanimously. It was very cool. We were all very happy about it, very stoked. But then less than a week later, they brought in this new manager who immediately started breaking sorts of labor laws, threatening to fire people for illegal reasons, cutting hours across the board without consulting the union. Specifically cutting hours beneath its threshold, so it was kind of like a soft withholding of benefits. She was maxing people out at 18 hours, and we're to get 20 hours to a week to qualify for like the health insurance and other things that Starbucks loves to brag about offering all of their baristas. She was being really racist. She was being homophobic and transphobic. She was being very belligerent. Every single anybody came to her with any issue. For instance, like somebody had a death in their family, and she was refusing to give them bereavement pay or even like offer it. Just all manner of just totally unprofessional and very often completely illegal things. Demanding people change their availability, despite the fact that there weren't enough hours to go around, according to her. Hiring a bunch of people, despite the fact that there weren't enough hours for people who already worked there, allegedly. So it was all clearly done in retaliation to our decision to unionize. We decided, rather than be driven out by the company that is clearly trying to make it too miserable for us to remain there, we would use our newfound power with the union to go on strike until the company agrees to, investigate her for these like egregious infractions and get rid of her from our store, and until they're to negotiate with the union anytime that there is a change in labor needs, or like be they like scheduling changes, or if we need to have more people on the floor so we don't have to skip our breaks and things like that. That second one is something that the company is legally obligated to do. So we're really just asking that they get rid of this manager who is in direct conflict with their stated values of inclusivity and whatnot, and that they follow the law that they should have been following this entire time.
So this is crazy. Like I have to ask, how many employees at that location are on strike? And for example, so that manager, is she still employed there? She's still coming into work?
Oh, she actually manages in another store that is just across town. That's not unionized, so they do not have the kind of protections that we do to go on strike. That said, a lot of them have reached out to me. Both past and present baristas have reached out to me to say, like, yes, what you're doing is right. We agree with it. We've experienced the same kind of behavior from her. So it's very vindicating. But the entire store has been shut down for, I think it's 38 days as of today. With absolutely nobody crossing the picking line in the store, which has been really great. We have unanimous support for the union throughout like the entire store. I think we have 20 or maybe 22 people who at the store, including the ones that she illegally hired. And all of the ones that I could get in contact with, which is everybody except for two who were very, very recent hires when we're like going on strike, have shown unambiguous support for both this and the union as a whole. So yeah, we've been out there 24/7 keeping this picket up for well over a month now. And they have been able to reopen the store. So, the entire store besides her is really on strike.
So if I'm not mistaken, this is the Starbucks location. For those who are not familiar, Boston University stretches down Commonwealth Avenue. So this location, if I'm correct, is on West Campus.
Yes, that's correct. We're like right across the street from the West Campus. We've actually had a lot of students and faculty showing up to show incredible support for us. Our picket does go 24/7. The reason being, the Teamsters that do all of our food deliveries have it in their contract that they will never cross a picket line. So they haven't been able to like try to sneak a delivery early in the morning or really late at night because we constantly have somebody there. And that kind of support couldn't be possible without having buy-in from the people at Boston University who have like showed up to man the picket line, late at night, early in the morning.
And that's what I was telling you guys. Like, that's what it's about. It makes a big difference when you have help and people to come out there to support you as well. So they can actually do shifts and take turns and things like that. I did want to ask, I thought I saw recently, and you can let me know if you were present for this. Was Bernie Sanders at your location?
Yeah, he was. It was really cool. We've had a couple of politicians there. Bernie Sanders is probably the only one that I got any excited over. But yeah, he stopped by our store to deliver some support before he had his rally with the Teamsters across the rim, Cambridge. I actually also got to speak at that event, which was really, really inspiring. Yeah, it was a quick thing. He's a busy guy. So it was probably like 15, 20 minutes. But even it's really incredible for him to, take the time to show up and show his support.
How can we help the people that are on strike? Like, do you guys have some type of mutual aid that's in place? Like, how are you guys like supporting each other? But if there's a link or anything that we can go to help you guys, how can we do so?
Yeah, so we have a strike fund going up. That's been totally funded by just like community supporters. That's been how we are mostly paying our bills right now, which is, taking a lot of the stress off of us so that we can keep this going as long as we need to. So I can like give you the link after this. But just showing up to support by staying a couple of hours and helping to staff the picket line. Really, the most crucial thing that we need right now is bodies in front of the store. And I can also send you the link to where people can sign up for that, because that's really how we've been able to manage this for so long. Without the support of people like the DSA or Socialist Alternative or PSL or any number of the non-government alphabet institutions, we could not be out here for as long as we have been. And that includes community support. We've been lucky enough to have a lot of union buy-in, just like with surrounding unions, showing up, help out. But with the school year starting, I know a lot of people are going to be a lot more busy. We're going to lose a lot of people to that. So if you want to show up to give us some support, that's probably the second best thing that you could do, aside from tossing us a couple of bucks and paying for some groceries for thing.
Awesome. All right, guys. I do want to point out the website here, sbworkersunited.org. Make sure you check that out so you can see the Starbucks workers that are trying to unionize or those who are also on strike. And I also want to mention as well, a lot of you or some of you that watch me are in the Boston area. So a lot of times you ask, like, how can you help? So Spencer just told you they could really use bodies in front of the store. So if you're able to do so, definitely reach out and let him know, because that's really important to have someone there in front at all times. So, but Spencer, anything else that you want to shout out before you go in reference to this action?
Yeah, I would just like to say that this is much bigger than just one store. This is not just about what is happening at our store. is not just about what is happening at Starbucks. This strike is kind of setting the tone for, I think, a lot of the incoming labor battles that are going to be fought in the coming months and years, because this is the first indefinite strike that has had to navigate. They don't want us to win. They'll do everything in their power to make sure we are put in our place as far as they're concerned. So having that community support and like having that outrage towards the company is crucial to getting us to a point where we can realistically have the leverage to get what we need. This is not just about Starbucks, because like every company that is dealing with the union movement right now is looking at Starbucks, just like Amazon is looking at Starbucks, just as Starbucks is looking at Amazon, to see what to expect from these new unions. And the unions themselves are looking at each other to know what to expect from these companies and how to navigate these battles themselves. So just because it is Starbucks today doesn't mean that it is not your workplace tomorrow.
Well said, Spencer. Spencer, thank you so much. Please text me those links and I'll add those to the video when this live stream uploads. But thank you so much for coming on, and I am very, very proud of you guys.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. Have a great night.
Thanks. You too.
Thanks.
All right, guys. So you heard that. Those of you who are in the area here in the local Boston area, they could use people to have their bodies in front of the store. So definitely help if you can. I'm going to get those links to you guys put into the details description of the video once this is uploaded. We definitely got to support them. I see there are a couple of comments here. I want to grab these as well. Thank you for the super sticker, Macharius. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for the super chat, The Traveler. Zelensky signed a law called Law 5371 that criminalized labor unions and collective bargaining throughout Ukraine. Wow, I didn't know that. Thanks for that tidbit there, The Traveler. Terry Hinton, where he's striking, I'll join the strike. It's on Com Ave. Actually, I'll pull up that address. Or Eric, can you pull up that address? I think you know what I'm talking about. If you just search BU Starbucks strike, if you Google it, it'll pull up the address. Thank you for the super sticker, Aberdeen71. Thank you for the super chat, AJF. I call BS disingenuousness on people like Saagar. He fails to address how our government aided in a coup in the mid-2010s and dared to clandestinely train Ukrainian forces between 2014 to present. Good point, AJF. Shout out to Tool Druid for becoming a Sabby member. Whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop. All right, Tool. Thank you for this super chat, AJF. This guy then wants you to focus on how EU nations aren't doing enough on military aid when the US is on the other side of the world and Europeans once again have wars in their backyard. In their neighborhood. That's a good point. And thank you for the super chat as well. The USA sabotages the Minsk agreement, which convinces Russia to do the wrong. Invade. Okay. Convinces Russia to do the wrong, I think you mean thing, in invading Ukraine. Wrong is wrong. Criminality is criminality. All good points. All good points. Okay, you found it. Thanks, Eric. I'll go ahead and share it. So this Starbucks location is 874 Commonwealth Avenue. Again, if you're familiar with Boston University, that's actually on West Campus. So that's where that Starbucks is located. And you can see it here in the picture. There it is. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the only one on West Campus. So people might be hurting for a bit if they want that coffee so bad. So yeah, that's the address. Thank you for putting that in there too, Andrew. Thanks so much for that. Okay, we are going to our final story, which is Charles Booker. If you haven't had a chance to answer that poll, please do so. Although I think I have a feeling it hasn't changed from when I started. But Charles Booker, you know, he's a cringe one. He was one of the progressives when he was running last time for the House. He was running for Congress. He was one of the ones that I thought had a fighting chance. You know, he was more of a fighter. And as time has gone by, I feel like he's just become more establishment. He sounds more like a liberal. He has this interview here with Al Sharpton in reference to policing, in reference to Breonna Taylor. And I want you to listen to what he says in this interview. And then I'm going to show you something on his website that kind of contradicts where he goes on this. But he is now running for office again, this time against Rand Paul for U.S. Senate. Now, I have spoken to people that live in that district. They say there's no chance in hell he's going to beat Rand Paul. I don't know. I don't live there. But I do feel that Charles Booker, to me, I feel like he's become a little bit more establishment. And I don't trust him. There's something about him. I don't trust him. I feel like he's going to sell out. Like, even if he does win, I feel like he's just going to go along with what's going on in there. I don't buy it. But shout out to K Study QB for this clip here. He clipped this interview that he had with Al Sharpton. And I think it's important that you listen to some of the things that are said here.
Recently made history as the first black nominee in a federal election in the state of Kentucky. And as you're now the state's Democratic primary candidate for the U.S. Senate, running against two-term incumbent Republican Senator Rand Paul, of course, you sought to challenge Kentucky's other Senator, Mitch McConnell, for his seat in 2020, but couldn't secure the nomination. Now you have the nomination. And you've been a state legislator. You've been one of the main advocates on some cases like Breonna Taylor. Talk about the effort to break the stranglehold Republicans seem to have on Kentucky's Senate seats.
Oh, boy.
Shoot, Rand, there's a fly in here. But Reverend, it's good to be with you today. And you're exactly right. We are defying the odds right now. We're showing that change is possible, even in a place where we're often counted out. And the stranglehold has really been ignoring regular people. I'm building a coalition of Kentuckians from the hood to the holler, every walk of life, because we're speaking about issues. We're going beyond the political division and talking about the challenges we face and showing.
I just want to pause it here for a second because I do want to point out something. Look at the label that they put in front of him. Charles Booker becomes first black nominee in a federal election in Kentucky. What did I tell you again about the liberal media and about the Democratic Party? Why do they always lead with identity politics? I'm not even saying that they couldn't have mentioned it, but they lead with it. The very beginning of this discussion, what did Al Sharpton lead with? He led with identity politics. And now they pin this in front of him. So even if you jump into this interview late, that's the first thing that you're going to see.
The audacity to call Rand Paul out. And because of that, we are making history and we're bending the arc and we're going to win this race.
Now, Kentucky's Democratic Governor Andy Beshear announced last month that he plans to back your run for the Senate. You have been endorsed by prominent Senate progressives like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker. But even as you make an...
When is Cory Booker a progressive? Did you guys catch that? You've been endorsed by Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. Cory Booker. He said progressives. Like, Cory Booker's not progressive. I don't know. I guess anyone can be one now, right?
Pursue history. You said that racist experiences inspired your Senate run. Can you elaborate on that? What would it mean to you and for the state of Kentucky to become its first black senator?
Well, first of all, I stand in this moment understanding the importance of shining the light and
identity politics again. First black senator. See, that's all they're selling here.
Breaking barriers and making it clear that as a Kentuckian, my family goes back several generations, some of whom were enslaved in the Commonwealth, some of whom were lynched in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And so to be here now talking about how we end poverty, how we make sure everyone has quality health care, how we support our veterans, how we take care of our loved ones and make sure we have clean air and clean water and repair our infrastructure. This is a huge moment. And it's a reminder to so many who have been crying out for justice that change is still possible, and we have to meet this moment together.
Now, Mr. Booker, earlier this month, the Department of Justice charged 4 former and current Louisville Metro Police Department members with violating Breonna Taylor's civil rights in the 2020 police raid that resulted in her killing. I've heard you say that Taylor was a good friend of your family and that she was actually at the funeral for a cousin of yours who was tragically murdered in 2016. And you described attending Taylor's funeral back in 2020. You've even visited me at National Action Network and talked about issues of civil rights. So you've been involved. Can you talk to me about what that meant to you, especially during a time when you were also running for the U.S. Senate? And what's your reaction to these latest charges against the officers involved in her killing?
Reverend, so many people across Kentucky and across this country are tired. To call out for justice, to cry out for our humanity, it's exhausting. And there are times when you can feel like the change is not going to come, but we're reminded that it's still possible. The announcement of the arrest of officers finally at the federal level, because our Attorney General failed us, it was a reminder that justice and accountability can still be met.
So I'm wondering, did he call out Joe Biden when he said he was going to increase police funding? Did Charles Booker do that? Did Charles Booker call out President Biden when President Biden said at the State of the Union address that we are going to fund the police? Because now we're getting into the criminal justice discussion. Did he?
And even today, I'm heartbroken just thinking about all the pain that so many, not just Kentuckians, but people across the country have gone through in this cry for justice. Learned that a good friend, an organizer in the movement at Breeway, Chris Wells, lost his life. And in this moment of time, I'm hoping that this campaign can be a testament to the love and hope and potential of us not just meeting this moment, but continuing to fight for justice and healing. And so I'm encouraged by the progress and accountability, but there's so much more work to be done here in Kentucky and across the country.
Briefly, since we are out of time, Eastern Kentucky has been ravaged by the severe flooding in recent weeks, with more than 1,000 people rescued after torrential rains tore through the state last month. Rescue teams in boats searching through creeks clogged with rubble, work crews trying to restore power and water to homes, residents desperate to repair those homes and lives after the flooding. And of course, you had the president and first lady visiting the state after the disaster. Can you speak to the devastation that many residents in Eastern Kentucky are still experiencing a month later?
Reverend, the devastation is really hard to put to words. Places that I've worked through the years, places that I've seen thriving have been completely washed away. Churches gone, businesses gone. And in this moment of pain, just like when the tornado hit in Kentucky, we've shown up as family. We're organizing together, not about party, but about humanity. And the one person who hasn't been there is Rand Paul, and the people of Kentucky see it. Look, our infrastructure is crumbling. So we understand why President Biden showing leadership on the Infrastructure Act is critical. We need investments in our home and in our land so that we can have a thriving economy. But we have a lot of work ahead, and I'm sending out my prayers to Eastern Kentucky. Everyone join us in support. Go to charlesbooker.org/crisis response. Help us organize and build the way forward.
So Charles Booker just told you there that in the end, it wasn't about party. They were able to put that aside and help each other and help the people in the community. But for him, it really is about party, though. Now, whether or not Rand Paul was there, I don't know. But I don't want to go applaud Joe Biden for going there because that's a part of his job. As the president of the United States, when you have these natural disasters that happen in the United States, part of your job is to go there and make an appearance, at least make it look like you care about the people. That is part of his job. Do I think Rand Paul should have been there? Absolutely. But I want to touch on something here because they brought up criminal justice. Now, what happened to Breonna Taylor is it's disgusting. Those officers are now finally getting some type of accountability. Charles Booker was one of the people that spoke out heavily in reference to police brutality when he ran last time. But let me show you something about Charles Booker, because this is why you have to not just listen to them. You have to look at what they really stand for. And there's some good things on here. There's reparations, strong labor unions, affordable and sustainable housing, community safety. There's good things on here, but everyone says they support something. And I told you guys before, just supporting something, that's not enough. What was interesting to me was under community safety. Charles believes that every community in our Commonwealth deserves true community safety. We are reminded nearly every day that our failures that our current system produces. Keep that in mind. Unarmed Black men and women shot by the police, children caught in the crossfire of gun violence, mom and pop stores held up at gunpoint by a person who has only known poverty their entire lives. So all of this sounds good. But then we get down here. To truly realize community safety, we must have leadership at the federal level that will provide the resources and ability to address the the resources and the ability to address the root causes of crime. Why do you need to have the resources and the ability to address the root causes of crime when you already mentioned the primary root cause right here? Did anybody catch that? Mom and pop stores held up at gunpoint by a person who has only known poverty their entire lives. So when you get into this next paragraph here where they say we need to have these resources at the federal level to address what causes crime, that is a politician talking point. Like anybody could have used that same. Haven't I heard that before? We have to have the resources to address something. Address what? You already told us. It's never the resources to fix it, though. You guys ever notice that? It's resources to address something that's already been addressed. But the part that I want you to pay attention to is further down where it says, here we go here. Okay, this portion. This means we must stop criminalizing poverty and drug use. Again, what do you need the money for? What do you need resources to do? Okay. This means we must ensure families have financial freedom and security to pursue economic opportunities that don't reinforce violent outcomes. Okay. He pushing capitalism. This means that we must fully fund alternatives to policing. Now watch this. This is where I'm going to catch them. when appropriate. Now he's talking about alternatives to policing when appropriate. But then they go on to say, as Senator Charles will stand with the expanded Democratic majority to pass the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. Now, I talked about this last year when this bill was first announced. And I told people last year, if you actually look at the bill, the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act is actually giving more money to police. So either Charles Booker and his team didn't look at the actual bill like I did, or they did look at the bill and they're just using that act in here because they know it sounds good. And this is why I tell you, you can't just look at the title of a bill. You actually need to look at what's in it. George Floyd Justice in Policing Act sounds great until you look at the bill and you see that they're actually giving police more money in that bill. The Inflation Reduction Act sounds great as a title until you actually look at the bill and you realize it's not really addressing inflation. It's basically just Build Back Better, but watered down even more. But they have to give it a title that sounds appealing, something that will pass, right? I hope people catch this. Because I see a lot of people, a lot of liberals, pumping up and saying we need to pass this George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. They don't even know what's in the bill. They didn't even look at it. I know. Because when I tell them that the bill was giving police more money, they're like, what? They didn't look at it. They just repeat stuff, repeat talking points. Come on. Now, answer this. Giving police more money, is that justice for George Floyd? I don't think so. I don't think so. So it goes on to say, end qualified immunity, ban no-knock warrants, and lead for investments in social detriments of health to address violence as a public health crisis. You guys, I tell you, man. See, the thing is, a lot of people aren't going to read all this and they're not going to look into it. So he's talking about policing in that interview with Al Sharpton, but I've already pointed out a couple of things when it comes to community safety on his website that contradict what he's saying. So what is it? I just, no. But it gets worse. This ad, you have to see this ad. Hold on, guys. Don't hurt me for this one. Let's fall back. Here's his ad.
They called us a long shot. Said the movement in Kentucky was impossible. But man, we proved them wrong. As we made our stand together, I could not have imagined the new world we were about to step into. The height of racial tension, the pandemic, and insurrection. While Kentuckians lost their livelihoods and homes, a handful of privileged politicians chose to continue criminalizing poverty. While our loved ones were brutalized, they chose to do nothing. But the movement chose to blossom. In the span of just a couple years, we've seen how quickly a new reality can unfold, how our choices can make a difference. When the power went out, we weathered the storm together. When the pandemic hit, we were there for our neighbors. When our sister's door was kicked in, we marched. Those choices have already changed Kentucky forever. Those folks building walls between us, they're scared now. They saw how close we came to shifting the scales. Our forward motion, knocking them on their heels. And they'll stop at nothing to drag us backwards. They'll lie, they'll cheat, just to keep us from the polls. So our next move is one we must make together. It's a choice to adopt a Green New Deal for Kentucky and ensure a healthy planet for generations to come. A choice to guarantee quality health care for every man, woman, and child. A choice to ensure every person in Kentucky has more money in their pocket. A choice to move mountains and build a society where we all go to bed nourished, where we can all rest easy without worrying about our front door being busted down, where we come together, united, from the hood to the hollow, black, white, brown, to live in a commonwealth where everyone can thrive and reach for their God-given potential. That future is our choice. And that's why today I'm formally announcing an exploratory committee for U.S. Senate. We will transform Kentucky. And Rand Paul, you know it too.
Who makes these ads? I'm just curious. That ad did not come across to me as a progressive candidate. It didn't. That screamed liberal to me. It screamed liberal. Now, there was a poll. Let me see the results of that poll. Because I did reach out to you guys and ask you, do you think that Charles Booker will be able to beat Rand Paul? And I think Eric just pulled up the results. Yes. Okay. I'll go ahead and we can go ahead and add that to the stream. Whee! Do you think Charles Booker will beat Rand Paul? Now, 457 votes, 13% said yes, 87% said no. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So that doesn't look good for Charles. Does not look good. I have several criticisms of Rand Paul. I do like the fact that typically he tends to be anti-war. I do like that. But it has become very clear to me after talking to people who live there that for whatever reason, they continue to put him in. And they apparently are going to do that this time around too, from most people I've talked to. But there's something about Charles Booker to me. It just screams. He doesn't feel progressive. In that ad, I noticed he said we need health care for every man, woman, and child. What happened to the words Medicare for all? Are you guys noticing people aren't saying that anymore? That right there to me, it says something, because when you say we need health care for every man, woman, and child, that could be a bunch of different things. That's not Medicare for all necessarily. So somebody on his campaign, I bet you, said, pull back on the Medicare for all. Don't say those words. That's why I'm telling you that ad did not come across to me as progressive. I don't know. We'll find out, but I'm predicting Rand Paul will still win this again. And there was something that I thought was interesting too, because some of the things that he called out Republicans for doing in that ad, Democrats do too. When he was talking about voter turnout, that also goes along with redistricting and gerrymandering. Democrats do that too. When he was talking about Black people being killed by the police and certain Republicans not being there, you have a Democrat president in office right now, and he's funding the police. He's giving more money to the police. I don't know, dude. It's funny. It's really sad to see what has happened to the so-called progressive candidates. It's really sad. I'll take those comments on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip, Roger Meadows. Pass a ballot initiative or have legislature pass law creating cooperative business administration, providing counseling, tax resources, a voice in government, government contracting, consulting, education, training, financing, research to make it easier to form business cooperatives from scratch, or to aid in the conversion process when purchasing from the owner of a corporation when applying right of first refusal law. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Dave. Thanks for your coverage tonight, Sabby. Thank you, Dave. And thank you for this tip as well, Roger. With the established, workers wishing to unionize who are threatened with location shutdown by corporate HQ can go to the CBA, complain to CBA and say, okay, no problem. Let us know when they shut down. They can come in and help transition that abandoned brick and mortar location to a worker co-op. See what happened? Corporations ceded ground to the worker co-op without a fight. Now multiply across the US, worker co-ops can outnumber them in a decade. And thank you for this tip as well. I have no idea liberal was the new word for milquetoast. What does Zeneb think? She's over there. You know what? That's a good question. That's a good question. I think Zeneb, I think I asked her this before, that Rand Paul will win again. You know, it's the same thing with Mitch McConnell. Like he has like a terrible approval rating, but people still continue to vote for Mitch McConnell. Case study QB. Case is in the chat, guys. He said Cory Booker is not progressive. I didn't think so. I was like, Al Sharpton mentioned Cory Booker as progressive in the interview. I was like, what? Welcome, Case. Again, we appreciate all of your clips as usual. I think I have a couple of comments here. Tool Druid. Booker got co-opted. Mama Bear probably sat him down and told him how the game's played, just like she did to AOC. Good points, Tool. Thank you for the super chat, AJF. Notice the side hit on welfare state remark Saagar makes. Oh my, a nation wants to service their own first before anyone else's interest. That's a good point, AJF. Rodrigo, that ad put me to sleep. It's not powerful at all. It feels liberal. Rodrigo also says, you can say it, Sabby. Screams fraud. And shout out to Case again. Much love at Sabby Sabs. Yeah, Charles Booker is going to be a company man Democrat like Cory Booker, etc. Yeah, he's giving me those kind of vibes. Okay, guys. So thanks for hanging out with me tonight. Tomorrow is Wednesday, so I won't be here, but I will upload clips for you guys. And I do want to remind you, next week, next Friday, I will be heading to New York for Camp Dada. So I'll be with the Bank Sisters and all of the other activists participating. I think Quaker Socialists will always also be there as well. I'm really looking forward to that, for all of us as activists to get together and annoy some rich people. So I'm excited for that, guys. So I think during that time, expect to just see clips from me at least that Friday, and on the weekends, like you usually do anyway. I will be coming back. When am I coming back here? Wait, when am I coming back? Oh, I will be coming back that Monday, but I probably won't stream that night. So I plan to do a live stream while I'm at Camp Dada of at least one of the actions that we do there. So look for that over the weekend. So the weekend might be a little bit weird. You'll just have to look for me. I'll put it up on my newsletter. Yeah, so subscribe to my newsletter. Some of you, that's how you get those notifications, is my newsletter. And I will stream that Tuesday night, normal time. So yeah, I'm going to try to do a couple of streams for the action events that we have there. And yeah, it should be, I'm looking forward to it. a lot of us, are in different states. So this is my first time meeting a lot of people except for Quaker Socialist because she was right here in Massachusetts with me. But I'm excited. I'm ready for it. And we got to do more of this, right? We got to do more of this. Go ahead and hit that like button. Give it a Hawk smash if you didn't have a chance to do so. Thank you for hanging out with me tonight, guys. I think I forgot to say, Aberdeen, did I shout out your super sticker? Oh, okay. I think I did. Okay. Alrighty, guys. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.